You're scrolling through your phone right now, aren't you? Maybe you've been meaning to work on that project, hit the gym, or finally start learning that skill you've been talking about for months. But instead, here you are, stuck in this endless loop of checking social media, watching videos, doing anything but the thing you know you should be doing. And the worst part? You're not even enjoying it. You're just numb, just going through the motions. That's not laziness. That's your dopamine system completely hijacked. And in the next 15 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how to take it back using neuroscience, not willpower. Most people think they're lazy. They beat themselves up, thinking there's something fundamentally wrong with them. But here's what's really happening inside your brain right now. Your dopamine system, the very mechanism that's supposed to drive you toward achievement, growth, and meaningful action, has been rewired to crave the easiest, quickest hits of pleasure. Every notification, every scroll, every click has trained your brain to expect instant gratification. And when real work shows up, work that requires effort and patience, your brain literally rejects it because the dopamine payoff is too far away. This isn't a character flaw. This is basic neuroscience. And once you understand how this system actually works, you can hack it. Before we dive deep into this, if you're serious about understanding your brain and taking control of your life, hit that subscribe button right now. Click the notification bell so you never miss a video that could literally change the trajectory of your life. And drop a like if you're ready to stop being a passenger in your own mind and become the driver. Let's get into this. So what exactly is dopamine? Most people think dopamine is the pleasure chemical. They think it's what makes you feel good. That's not quite right. Dopamine is actually the anticipation chemical. It's what drives you toward rewards. It's the wanting, not the having. When you're craving something, when you're motivated to take action, when you feel that pull toward a goal, that's dopamine doing its job. And here's the critical part. Your brain releases dopamine not when you get the reward, but when you anticipate getting it. That's why the moment before you check your phone feels more exciting than actually seeing what's on the screen. Your brain has learned to expect a reward, so it floods your system with dopamine in anticipation. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Your brain doesn't distinguish between good rewards and bad rewards. It doesn't care if you're anticipating a life-changing accomplishment or just another meaningless scroll through Instagram. All it knows is that certain behaviors lead to dopamine release, and it will push you toward those behaviors regardless of whether they serve your long-term goals. This is why you can spend 3 hours watching videos, but can't focus for 30 minutes on something that actually matters. The quick hits have hijacked your dopamine system. Think of your dopamine system like a water bucket with a hole in it. Every time you get a quick hit of pleasure, you're pouring water into the bucket. But if that hole gets bigger and bigger, you need more and more water just to keep the bucket at the same level. That's what's happening in your brain. Every time you check your phone, every time you binge another series, every time you choose the easy dopamine hit over the hard work, you're making that hole bigger. You're raising your baseline dopamine threshold. And when your baseline is that high, normal activities that used to feel rewarding, like reading a book, having a real conversation, or working on a meaningful project, they don't register anymore. They don't cross the threshold. So your brain labels them as not worth doing. This is called dopamine desensitization. And it's the real reason you feel unmotivated. It's not that you're lazy. It's that your brain's reward system has been recalibrated to only respond to extreme stimulation. The good news? You can recalibrate it back. But it requires you to do something that sounds almost cruel at first. You need to lower your baseline dopamine. You need to make that bucket smaller again. And the way you do that is through something called a dopamine detox. Now, before you panic, I'm not talking about sitting in a dark room for days doing nothing. That's extreme and unnecessary. What I'm talking about is strategically removing the highest dopamine spiking activities from your life for a set period of time. This means no social media, no video games, no binge-watching shows, no junk food, no recreational internet browsing. Basically, anything that gives you pleasure without effort needs to go temporarily. And I know what you're thinking. That sounds miserable. And yes, the first few days are rough. You're going to feel bored. You're going to feel restless. Your brain is going to scream at you to give it what it wants. But here's what happens after 3, 4, 5 days. Things that used to seem boring start to become interesting again. Reading becomes engaging. Conversations become fulfilling. Work becomes tolerable, even enjoyable. That's your baseline dopamine dropping. That's your brain recalibrating. But here's where most people mess this up. They do the detox, they feel better, and then they immediately go back to their old habits. And within days, sometimes hours, they're right back where they started. The detox is just the reset button. The real hack comes in what you do after. You need to rebuild your dopamine system around the behaviors you actually want. And this is where we get into the science of dopamine scheduling. Your brain learns through repetition. Every time you do something and get a reward, your brain strengthens that neural pathway. So if you want to build motivation for hard work, you need to create artificial dopamine spikes around that work. One of the most powerful ways to do this is through a technique called temptation bundling. This is where you pair something you need to do with something you enjoy. For example, if you love listening to music or podcasts, only allow yourself to listen while you're working out or doing a task you've been avoiding. Your brain starts to associate the hard task with the pleasurable reward, and over time, the hard task itself triggers dopamine release. You're literally rewiring your motivation. Another critical hack is understanding the role of dopamine in goal setting. And this is where most people completely sabotage themselves. When you set a massive goal that's months or years away, your brain doesn't release dopamine because the reward is too distant. It can't visualize it. It can't feel it. So you feel no motivation to work on it. But if you break that big goal down into tiny milestones you can hit daily or weekly, your brain releases dopamine every time you hit one. This is why video games are so addictive. They've mastered the art of giving you constant small wins. You're always leveling up, always progressing, always getting that next hit of achievement. You need to gamify your own life the same way. Don't just say I want to get in shape. Say I'm going to work out 3 times this week. Hit that goal. Celebrate it. Let your brain feel that reward. Then set the next tiny goal. This is how you build sustainable motivation. There's also something called dopamine stacking that very few people talk about. This is where you deliberately create anticipation before a task. Remember, dopamine is about anticipation, not the reward itself. So before you start working on something, take 60 seconds to visualize the outcome. Imagine how good it will feel to finish. Imagine the satisfaction, the pride, the progress. This pre-game visualization actually triggers dopamine release before you even start. And that dopamine gives you the motivational boost to begin. Elite athletes do this before every performance. They mentally rehearse success, and their brain responds as if it's already happening. You can do the same thing with your work, your workouts, your creative projects. But let's talk about something even more counterintuitive. Cold exposure. Yes, cold showers and ice baths. And no, this isn't some internet trend. There's real neuroscience behind this. When you expose your body to cold water, your dopamine levels spike by up to 250%, and they stay elevated for hours. This isn't a quick hit that crashes. This is a sustained, natural dopamine boost that improves your mood, your focus, and your motivation for the entire day. The reason it works is because cold exposure triggers a survival response. Your brain interprets it as a challenge you've overcome, and it rewards you with dopamine. It's one of the fastest, most reliable ways to hack your dopamine system without any technology or supplements. Just 2 minutes of cold water in the morning can completely change your mental state. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. What about the things that are actively destroying your dopamine system? Because it's not enough to just add good habits. You also need to remove the toxic ones. And the biggest culprit by far is your smartphone. The average person checks their phone over 200 times a day. Every single time you do that, you're training your brain to crave distraction. You're teaching it that focus is uncomfortable and that relief is always one click away. This is why you can't sit through a single task without reaching for your phone. Your brain has been conditioned to interrupt itself. The solution is not willpower. Willpower is finite. It runs out. The solution is removing the option entirely. Delete social media apps from your phone. Turn off all non-essential notifications. Put your phone in another room when you're working. Make distraction hard and focus easy. This is called environment design, and it's one of the most underrated strategies in neuroscience. Your environment shapes your behavior far more than your intentions do. If your phone is within arm's reach, you're going to check it no matter how disciplined you think you are. Remove the temptation, and you remove the problem. Another massive dopamine destroyer is multitasking. Every time you switch between tasks, your brain has to reorient itself. And every time it does that, it burns through dopamine reserves. This is why you can work for hours but feel like you accomplished nothing. You weren't actually working. You were task switching. And task switching is one of the most mentally draining activities you can do. The fix is single tasking. One task, one block of time, no interruptions. Set a timer for 25 minutes. Work on one thing and one thing only. When the timer goes off, take a 5-minute break. This is called the Pomodoro technique, and it works because it aligns with how your brain actually processes focus. You're not trying to maintain attention for hours. You're just aiming for 25 minutes. And every time you complete a session, you get a dopamine hit from the accomplishment. It's small, but it's real. And those small hits add up. Let's also talk about something most productivity advice completely ignores: rest. Real rest. Not scrolling on your phone. Not watching TV. Actual rest. Your brain needs downtime to process information, consolidate memories, and restore dopamine levels. If you're constantly stimulating your brain with content, noise, and distraction, it never gets a chance to recover. This is why you can sleep 8 hours and still wake up exhausted. You're not giving your brain real rest. Start incorporating intentional boredom into your day. Go for a walk without your phone. Sit in silence for 10 minutes. Stare out a window. It sounds ridiculous, but this is when your brain does its best thinking. This is when creativity happens. This is when dopamine levels naturally restore. Boredom is not the enemy. Constant stimulation is. Now, here's something that might surprise you. Dopamine is also deeply connected to learning. When you learn something new, when you have an aha moment, when a concept suddenly clicks, your brain releases dopamine. This is why kids are naturally curious. Their brains are wired to seek out learning because learning itself is rewarding. But as adults, we stop learning. We stick to what we know. We avoid challenges. And when we stop learning, we stop getting those natural dopamine hits. This is one of the reasons life starts to feel flat and monotonous as we get older. The solution is to become a learner again. Pick up a new skill. Read books that challenge you. Have conversations that stretch your thinking. Brain health expert Jim Quick talks about this constantly. He says your brain is like a muscle. If you don't use it, it atrophies. But if you challenge it regularly, it grows stronger, sharper, more resilient. And every time you push through a learning challenge, you're training your dopamine system to crave growth instead of comfort. There's also a social component to dopamine that most people overlook. Human connection, real face-to-face interaction, releases dopamine. But not just any interaction. Meaningful connection, deep conversations, shared experiences, laughter. These are some of the most powerful dopamine triggers we have. But in the age of digital communication, we've replaced real connection with shallow interactions. We've traded depth for breadth, and our brains are suffering because of it. If you want to feel more motivated, more alive, more engaged with life, you need to prioritize real relationships. Call a friend instead of texting. Meet up in person instead of video chatting. Be fully present in conversations instead of half listening while scrolling. These small shifts have massive neurological impacts. And here's the final piece of the puzzle. Dopamine is also tied to purpose. When you have a clear sense of why you're doing something, when your actions are aligned with your values, your brain releases dopamine more readily. This is why people who have a strong sense of purpose report higher levels of motivation and satisfaction. They're not relying on external rewards to feel good. Their internal sense of meaning is generating its own dopamine. So if you're struggling with motivation, it might not be a dopamine problem. It might be a purpose problem. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? What do I actually care about? What kind of person do I want to become? When you have clear answers to those questions, motivation becomes easier because your brain understands the deeper reward. So here's what you need to understand. Your dopamine system is not broken. It's just been hijacked by a world designed to exploit it. Every app, every website, every piece of content is engineered to grab your attention and hold it. And the more you engage with these systems, the more you train your brain to crave distraction over depth, pleasure over purpose, ease over effort. But you can take it back. You can rewire your brain. You can rebuild your motivation from the ground up. It just requires you to understand how dopamine actually works and to design your life around that knowledge. Start with the detox. Remove the high-stimulation activities for a week. Let your baseline drop. Then rebuild intentionally. Use temptation bundling. Break big goals into small wins. Visualize before you start. Take cold showers. Remove distractions from your environment. Single task instead of multitask. Rest without stimulation. Learn something new every day. Prioritize real human connection. And most importantly, anchor everything to a deeper sense of purpose. When you do this, you're not just fighting laziness. You're fundamentally changing how your brain processes motivation. You're becoming someone who doesn't need to rely on willpower because your dopamine system is working for you, not against you. If this video helped you understand your brain better, if you're ready to stop being a slave to distraction and start taking control of your focus, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. Leave a like on this video. It helps more people find this information. And drop a comment telling me which dopamine hack you're going to implement first. I read every single one. The life you want isn't on the other side of motivation. Motivation is on the other side of action. And action becomes effortless when your brain is wired to crave it. So stop waiting to feel like it. Start hacking your dopamine. Start building the neural pathways that lead to the person you want to become. Because the truth is, you're not lazy. You're just playing a game you didn't know you were in. Now you know the rules. Time to win.